Welcome to Civil Discourse, a podcast where participants are free to share their ideas, empathize with other perspectives, and who intend to advance to a better solution to fix a societal ill. We will focus on topics that are particularly complicated. In a time where information is from sources more opinionated than ever, our mission is to find solutions and goals to accelerate the nation's progress with cultural impunity. I'm your host, Todd Furniss. Welcome today to Civil Discourse. It's our first episode, and the goal of this conversation is to engage with others around issues facing our nation, which are particularly complicated, and where the culture and the law and the industry are all coming together in a way that hasn't really solved problems in the way that our nation needs those problems to be solved. I'm joined today, happily, by my good friend, Dr. Jim Denison. I serve on Jim's board, in all fairness and full disclosure, and I'm really delighted and honored to be able to do that. Jim is one of those guys whose resume you read and you feel like you got to put it down because it's so humbling. I remember I had the same problem with when I read Arthur Ashe's biography and all the things he had done by kind of age 25. Mm-hmm. Jim, when I read your resume, I'm similarly stunned. Very prolific author, has written over 15,000 sermons, over 20 books, writes a daily essay. He's a font of information. And so, Jim, we're delighted to have you. So thank you so much for coming.
Delighted to be with you today, Todd. It's an honor to be in this conversation with you. Not only am I grateful for you professionally and our, I think, decade or so of being on this board together and serving together in this context, but just the thought leader you are, the encourager you are to me, the friend you are to me. And so to be in this conversation with you is a great privilege, and I'm honored to be part of it.
Well, thank you. So two things real quickly. I want to kind of mention the forum, talk a little bit about the forum and its mission, and most importantly, you've been really blessed with fantastic audience growth. Tell us the size of your audience.
Well, yeah, thank you for that privilege. So my background as a cultural apologist, my passion is helping people think biblically about cultural issues so they can use their influence to make a difference in the culture. We think there's an enormous need for a movement of culture-shaping Christians, of people that will take their faith seriously, that will drive Sunday into Monday, that will live with biblical ethics, that will be salt and light in the culture and be an example, kind of be the change we need to see. My own background, really is my dad's story. As you know, Dad was very active in the church, was in World War II and never went to church again. And so I grew up in a loving home, but all my dad's questions, all the spiritual issues, the intellectual issues, was invited to church as a teenager, became a Christian, but still had all these questions and struggles, and read C.S. Lewis's Mere Christianity. Changed my life like it has so many others. First time I'd seen anyone deal with faith intellectually. Wound up doing a PhD in philosophy of religion and teaching on 4 seminary faculties in philosophy and culture and apologetics. I've pastored 5 churches now. Over the years, about 20,000 members, I guess. And then about 11 years ago, as you know, we started what we call Denison Forum so that I could full-time speak to cultural issues in a biblical context. Our purpose is not to communicate my ideas or my thoughts. I'm not trying to be a pundit. I'm really trying to help people think biblically about the issues of the day, whatever they are. So I write a daily article each morning, goes out by about 5:30 that morning, based on that day's news. This morning's article was about Tiger Woods' car accident and his overnight surgery, and went from there and made some points out of all of that. We have, I think, about 300,000 subscribers to the article, about 2.2 million in the total audience through social and other means of communicating the content. It's been remarkable over this last year, the way God has just been so faithful, the way God has blessed. Our larger ministry is up to about 4.5 million with all of our various brands. We have a devotional resource, we have a parenting resource, a Bible study resource, leadership resources, and all of that is more than doubled in the last year. Donors have more than doubled, income has more than doubled, have more than 40 staff members now, and some just really brilliant people in their space. And I just try to stay out of the way, write stuff and do video and content and media, do a lot of radio media, a lot of radio interviews and such. And it's really my passion, just to help people think biblically about the issues of the day. That's why I'm so excited to do this with you.
Well, thank you for that. And in order to do that, it seems to me that central to your work is the need to identify cultural issues that need to be addressed. And that's why I kind of go to your most recent book. When I was preparing for this, I was really kind of astonished by some of the statistics in your introduction from the study that was done by the PR firm. Could you talk a little bit about that and just how incivility is so adversely affecting our culture in such a material way?
Absolutely. The book's entitled Respectfully, I Disagree. It was published in time for the electoral cycle last year. Not that there was incivility in the electoral cycle at all. Not that we're not getting along extremely well across partisan divides, right? So I really wanted to try to speak into that and help Christians speak their mind, obviously, take your positions, but do so in a way that draws people closer to Christ rather than driving them further away. Let's be part of the solution rather than part of the problem. So as you say, I began looking at the issue of incivility in the culture. I discovered, according to a particular survey, Civility in America 2019 Solutions for Tomorrow by public relations firm Weber Shandwick, they found that 68% of Americans consider civility in America to be a major problem. 68%. 25% consider it to be a problem. Only 7% say it's not a problem. 93% say that it is. And then they list top 10 consequences of incivility: online bullying, harassment, violent behavior, hate crimes, intimidation and threats, intolerance, people feeling less safe in public spaces, discrimination, less community engagement, feelings of isolation and loneliness. That's your devotional thought for the day, right? So this is obviously an epidemic, and that was what I wanted to speak into.
Well, thank you for that. And essentially, what you're saying is we have more than one pandemic going on right now. One pandemic is a viral pandemic, and the other is one that's kind of viral in the social context, and that it's spreading across our country in the form of incivility. Now, this is intended to be a secular conversation, but I think we have a lot of lessons we can learn from the work you've done in this area. And my goal is to kind of get some frameworks. In other words, how should we think about civil discourse? What should be some guardrails for keeping the conversation intact and online and respectful in the form of its exchange, so that we can learn from that and make sure that we're honoring that and we're honoring each other in this exchange, more beyond today, but also with future speakers we might invite on, and making sure that we stay on point and within the boundaries of civility.
Yeah, what a great question. What a great foundational question, and not just for today, but for other conversations as we'll have them down the way. What comes to mind anyway for me is two what appear to be competing beliefs, two competing truths. In philosophy, we speak of antinomies as accepting apparently contradictory facts as both true. The way that light travels, for instance, Bohr's model of complementarity, by some measures it's particle, by some it's wave. Well, it can't be both, but it seems like it is. So we accept both of those at the same time. In theological terms, Christians say God is three in one, and Jesus is fully divine, fully human. So there's this kind of balance we need to maintain. Well, in this context, I would say the balance is we need to be absolutely transparent about what we believe. We need to be absolutely straightforward. We need to tell people what we think. We need to feel the freedom to be able to do that. And podcasts like this, conversations like this, are a terrific means toward that end. But at the same time, we need to be so careful not to impugn the motives of those with whom we disagree. Not to assume that because they disagree with us, that we know why, that we understand the motive behind that, that we understand the reason why they feel as they do about this, to try to get out of our prism and see through their prism, to try to get to their meta-narrative, try to get to their founding principles, try to get to their presuppositions, and see if I can understand this issue in that context. I can illustrate that very, very quickly. I've been doing a lot of work recently on the so-called Equality Act that is being discussed by the House of Representatives again this week. It passed in 2019. From there to go to the Senate. It would, as you know, would elevate to civil rights protected class issues relative to gender identity, sexual orientation, LGBTQ issues. Well, for an evangelical like me, this is a very frightening thing because it doesn't allow for any kind of recourse to Religious Freedom Restoration Act. So in other words, you could see Catholic adoption agencies being forced to adopt children to same-sex couples in violation of their religious beliefs. Baylor, where I serve, could be forced to do sex change operations, that sort of thing. And so I'm looking at this and thinking through my prism, well, this is an absolute attack on religious freedom. Why doesn't everybody see this? If I can get out of my mind and get in the other side, Todd, in their mind, they look at my position the same way I look at racism, the same way I look at racial bigotry. I think it's absolutely horrific. Racism is an absolute sin. It's the original sin, you could say, in American history. I think it's absolutely horrible if someone wouldn't do an interracial marriage. Well, that's how they see me about same-sex marriage. I think it's absolutely horrific that somebody would discriminate against somebody of a different race relative to housing or civil rights. Well, that's how they see my position relative to LGBTQ issues. And if a KKK person wanted to appeal to religious liberty to defend their position, I'd say, well, that's just wrong. Well, that's how those that are supporting the Equality Act feel about my appeal to religious liberty in the light of my beliefs. If I can see it from their perspective, I'm sorry?
Yeah. So I think what I'm hearing you say is that the first element, in order to have true, genuine civil discourse, is the freedom to and the confidence and the security to be able to speak your mind in a transparent fashion.
Know what you believe and why you believe it. Exactly.
Yes. And the second element, if I hear you correctly, is empathy.
That's right.
And almost like a form of compassion. The idea is you want to hear what the other person has to say and genuinely inquire as to what that person has to say and why they're saying it, and not just the output, but the origin of the thinking that supports the output.
The origin is the point. Okay. Exactly. What are the presuppositions? We all have presuppositions. What are their presuppositions? Where are they coming from, as my kids would say? We have to get past what they're saying to why they're saying it.
Very good. So you mentioned also the ethics issue, and you serve as the resident scholar on ethics for Baylor, Scott and White, the largest healthcare systems in the state of Texas. I want to get to that in the second episode we're going to do here shortly, but I want to just highlight the fact that did come up because it's going to play an important role in the way that you talk about things, because it sounds to me like you're doing what you can to anchor your belief system as well as your inquiry into others' belief systems in morality and ethics. It's just not a religious issue. It's a morality and an ethics issue. Is that correct?
Thank you for saying that. On a larger issue, it's exactly right. The issues that I try to address, the meta-narrative concerns that I have, transcend evangelical Christianity. As important as I believe, obviously, biblical values would be, we're really having conversation beyond that and outside of that, and issues and concerns that I think all Americans, really all humans, on some level really need to be thinking about. And I really want us to look at it, whatever the issue is, from that perspective, rather than merely from one particular point of view that happens to be mine. That's exactly right.
Very good. So we have the first one is freedom of speech, and including that is context and confidence and a number of things. The second thing is empathy. Mm-hmm. What's the third thing?
Well, I think at the end of the day, and this is a biblical point of view, Ephesians 4:15, speak the truth in love. At the end of the day, even where you and I have to disagree, where I understand your presupposition, I understand where you're coming from, hopefully you understand mine, and we simply are going to agree to disagree, let's do so in a way that advances discourse rather than advancing division. Let's not see the other as the enemy. Let's not see the other as the threat that so often the caricature drives us toward. Let's see this as an engagement toward common ground where we can find it, and toward a better future where we can build it together. A quick example was back when Bill Clinton was president, and he would talk about the abortion issue and say that he believed abortion should be safe, legal, and rare. And those of us on the pro-life side would want to come along and say, well, let's work on rare. We may not be able to get the safe and legal, but let's do rare together. Let's find common cause together. And when we do that, we're building a more civil society, even when we disagree on the issues that remain foundational to us.
So what's also coming through to me in this exchange is that there's a commitment to inquire. Mm. In other words, it's not dueling monologues and dueling positions, but rather almost a Socratic method of inquiry and dialogue and questions to ferret out or flush out, if you will, develop each other's ideas so that there's an exchange of understanding in addition to hopefully the development of a solution. Does that make sense?
If I haven't learned something in today's conversation, I haven't been listening. As you know, out of your legal background, the Socratic method of seeking to draw out truth, a dialectical approach where we're both learning something and we come to a third that's greater than either of us individually, the sum is greater than the parts, is absolutely the goal here, I think. If we're going to build a civil discourse in a secular democracy where the word God nowhere appears in the Constitution, we have to be able to do that on a level of commonality, on a level of consensual morality, on a level of larger agenda, larger purpose to which we're going together. That kind of conversation, that kind of hard listening, that kind of humility is, I think, essential to the democratic experiment and to the future of our discourse and our civility.
What are you seeing in three areas popping up for you? You're obviously, you're still involved with a variety of different organizations. Some of those have political aspects of it. So that means you kind of have to be an observer of the political sphere. But you're also a father and a grandfather. So you happen to see what happens at dining room tables. What are you seeing at dining room tables today? Is that a microcosm what's happening on television, or is something else happening at dining room tables and with families across the nation?
Yeah, everything I'm seeing and reading and a little of what I'm experiencing myself is that, unfortunately, in dining room tables as a microcosm of the larger culture, we're seeing a continued siloing. We're seeing a continued echo chamber where we only want to listen to Fox News or CNN. We only want to subscribe to this podcast, but not that. We only want to have our news services narrated for us. We want there to be agreement around ideological issues. It's just too hard to disagree with people over the election or over what the issue might be. So we're seeing this kind of segregating happening sociologically. It's not just red state, blue state anymore. It's red areas in states and blue areas in states. And we're now seeing people making decisions about where they want to live and raise their kids in light of ideological concerns. I understand that on one level, people are just tired of the conflict, tired of the stuff, just don't want to deal with it anymore. On the other, though, it's awfully hard to have civil discourse if there's no one in the room with whom I disagree, if I can't get across the chasm on some level. Todd, I saw a thing the other day that more Republicans and Democrats are opposed to their children dating somebody from the other party than ever before.
Wow.
To me, that's frightening.
Isn't that?
Yeah.
Yes. Do we have to keep this in a historical context? You mentioned interracial marriage and how you can't imagine today that a pastor wouldn't marry a couple of with two different races. I'm reminded that the laws changed in the big scheme of things only fairly recently. 50 years ago, a little over 50 years ago, Loving versus Virginia, which was the constitutional question around interracial marriage in the state that started by the state of Virginia, was decided. 50 years is not a long time in the big scheme of things, but how can we accelerate our progress where these kinds of ideas are more inculcated into our culture and our community with kind of a cultural impunity, if you will? How can we be more loving in that regard?
Yeah, that's a great question. And impunity is the right word as well. On the positive side, we certainly have tools at our disposal we didn't have 50 years ago. We have the ability with the megaphone of a cell phone, right, to be able to communicate in ways that we never have been able to do before without the filters that used to exist. And a lot of the barriers to communication used to exist. On the other side, unfortunately, it's this kind of curating of content where I only want to listen to people with whom I agree. So I never get to people who can change my mind or I can change their mind. So I think we need to be really intentional about this. I think we need to almost develop quota systems where we say, how many people have I talked to this week with whom I disagree on issues? How many places have I gone to get sources I know I'm going to disagree with? How much am I intentionally pushing myself beyond my own opinion kind of echo chambers? And not to mention being able to communicate in those other places where people might disagree with me. We're going to have an intentionality and impunity and intentionality about this while we do it in a compassionate spirit of humility. That kind of initiative is going to be really essential, I think, going forward.
Very good. Well, that's very helpful, Jim. I'm really grateful for our time this morning. What a fun little conversation, and I think you kind of set up the way we want to go forward with this program and genuinely engage in civil discourse. The three things I'm taking away here are, again, the freedom of speech and the confidence to express yourself. Two, the empathy with the position and the point of origin of the other speaker. And then three, the commitment, the intent to find common ground and new ways to solve problems in the context of that empathy. Did I miss anything there?
No, I believe that's exactly right. Quick example, very quickly. I happened to see the Daniel Day-Lewis movie Lincoln again over the past weekend. One of my favorite movies of all time. Part of what isn't in the new movie, unfortunately, but was part of the story, is the friendship he had with Frederick Douglass. As you may know the story, as all of this began, Douglass saw Lincoln as very much an opponent, as very much because he was moving too slowly, far too slowly, Douglass believed, relative to equality, relative to emancipation. Lincoln saw Douglass as an opponent, saw him as a skeptic and a critic, but they developed a friendship across their disagreements. And Douglass moved Lincoln, and Lincoln moved Douglass. And by the time of Lincoln's second inauguration, Douglass stood in line, couldn't get in the White House to the reception. Lincoln found out he was out there and ordered him to be brought into the reception, where Lincoln and Douglass could not only shake hands, but talk together and plan the future together. Well, it started on a relational basis, and from there it moved over to the issues that had been dividing them, and they could find common ground and move forward. That's more of what we need in the future.
Unlike the most recent inauguration, where we did not have a reenactment of that, unfortunately.
No, we did not.
Well, Jim, thank you so much. This is fantastic. And when we get back together, we're going to try and employ those three elements of civil discourse in the discussion we're going to have around I think, seminal question around healthcare, which is ultimately, is it moral for a clinician to profit from rendering services to a patient? Thank you so much. And for those of you out there, I strongly encourage that you read Jim's book, Respectfully, I Disagree. It's a fantastic read. And I also encourage you to subscribe to his daily essay. It's also very, very good and heartwarming, and also not only inspirational, but intellectually engaging. So thank you for that, Jim. And we'll pick up in just a minute.
Thanks so much, Todd.
Thanks for watching this week's episode of Civil Discourse. To learn more about today's topic or our guest, visit www.the60percentsolution.com or www.tfip.group.